Hello and welcome to Back to the Science. I'm Dr. Susan Oliver and I'm a scientist, and this is Cindy Oliver and she's a doc. Now, if you listen to Dr. John Campbell at all regularly, you would know that he's not a big fan of pharmaceutical companies and has in fact suggested that maybe they are not being adequately regulated. Well, you can imagine my surprise when I tuned into a recent video of his entitled, I Want This Vaccine, where he was not only supporting a pharmaceutical company, he was suggesting that they should be able to sell their product without getting regulatory approval.
The irony just...
He made these comments during an interview with Professor Angus Dalgleish, who is a highly credentialed oncologist. However, just because someone is highly credentialed, it doesn't mean we should blindly accept everything they say. So in this video, we will be going back to the science to see if the claims being made by Professor Dalgleish and Dr. Campbell are supported by the data, and if we really should be allowing companies to sell products without regulatory approval. But first, Dalgleish and Campbell made another tired old claim.
The problem with the COVID vaccines, the boosters, is they were perturbating a T-cell response, which is already controlling cancers you didn't know you had. And that's one of the reasons we're seeing so many B-cell lymphomas and leukemias, because they are well known to be contained and only come out when the person's suffering from something else.
Right, so things like B-cell lymphomas and melanoma.
Yes, the old vaccines causing cancer claim that anti-vaxxers have been banging on about for ages. But this time with a twist. Apparently, it's boosters. And there were some really nice anecdotes there. Well, here's some counter anecdotes. Here are 2 case studies of patients who experienced spontaneous cancer regression following mRNA vaccination. Of course, these could just be coincidences, as could Dalgleish's anecdotes. But it's easy to check if Dalgleish's claims of cancer progression following booster vaccination are true. We just need to check whether there has been an explosion in cancer deaths in England since the boosters were introduced. And I'm doing England because that's where he practices. And luckily for us, the Office for Health Improvement and Disparities has a handy dashboard that makes checking this out simple. Boosters became available in England in September 2021. So if we plug this date into the dashboard and select cancer, we get this page here. If we then zoom in on the summary table, we can see that there have been 332,627 registered deaths where cancer was mentioned as a cause of death on the death certificate since September 2021. The expected number of cancer deaths over the same period is 330,091, which means there have been 2,536 excess deaths related to cancer. But 5,023 of these cancer deaths had COVID-19 as the underlying cause of death. So there are no excess cancer deaths once we take COVID into consideration. So while Dalgleish's hypothesis for the claim of cancers increasing may sound convincing to some people, it is easily disproven by simply looking at the numbers. But if you want more details about why vaccine cancer claims are bollocks, Professor David Gorski, who is both an oncology surgeon and a cancer biologist and has both an MD and PhD, has written several articles about it. And I will provide a link to them in the video's description. Now, let's get back to the other claims in the video.
So, I mean, I don't see any reason why these mycobacteria of vaccine shouldn't be something to try
Well, I mean,
as a first line for anyone.
yeah. Well, I think that the data for pancreatic cancer is so strong it should be approved as it stands.
Yeah.
I really do. I mean, this idea this is what they say. Oh, we need bigger trials just to make sure it's safe. You don't need bigger trials to make sure it's safe. You do bigger trials because something doesn't work very well, and you've got to do lots of people before you show a small benefit. This is something that's been in thousands of people for TB in its development.
I'm starting to feel a bit angry now, because if I was bright yellow, itching all over with terminal pancreatic cancer, I wouldn't care less about these regulatory bureaucracies. Exactly. I would want the treatment from you.
Exactly.
Yes, you heard that right. Campbell and Dalgleish think that the company that makes the product that Dalgleish is touting should be able to just sell it without getting regulatory approval.
The irony, just...
Now, Dalgleish is claiming that the product hasn't been approved because regulatory authorities require more safety data. That is, in fact, only part of the issue. There is also insufficient evidence that it actually works. And this is important because it's not unusual for products to look promising in phase 1 and phase 2 trials, but then to fail to show efficacy in larger phase 3 trials. And this, in fact, happened with the product that was the precursor to the product that Dalgleish is now touting. The earlier product was also a killed mycobacterium vaccine, but it was based on a slightly different strain. And for those of you who don't know, mycobacteria are the type of bacteria that cause tuberculosis. And this vaccine was originally developed as a tuberculosis vaccine. The vaccine was trialled in patients with advanced small cell lung cancer, and results looked promising in phase 1 and phase 2 trials. But when it was studied as an add-on to chemotherapy in a larger phase 3 trial, it didn't improve survival, although there was some improvement in quality of life. And we don't know whether the same thing will be the case for the new product unless it's properly tested. But let's have a look at the data for pancreatic cancer that Dalgleish said was so strong that the product should be approved now. This is what he wrote about it in a peer-reviewed paper that he authored after the phase 2 study. In this study, IMM101 in combination with GEM was as safe and well tolerated as GEM alone in patients with advanced PDAC. And there was a suggestion of a beneficial effect on survival in patients with metastatic disease. This supports further evaluation of IMM101 in an adequately powered confirmatory study. Moreover, ongoing analyses to identify potentially predictive markers of response will guide the design of this new study. Not exactly that the results are so strong that product should be approved now. But let's have a closer look at the study where that paragraph came from. It was published in the British Journal of Cancer, and the title is Randomised Open Label Phase 2 Study of Gemcitabine with and without IMM101 for Advanced Pancreatic Cancer. IMM101 is the name of the mycobacterium product, and gemcitabine, or GEM, was the standard of care for advanced pancreatic cancer at the time the study was set up, which is why it was used as the comparator. So these are the overall survival results. If we look at all patients, the median survival for patients on IMM101 plus GEM was 6.7 months compared with 5.6 months for patients who were just taking GEM. And this difference wasn't statistically significant. They did, however, do some subgroup analyses, and they found that if they just looked at patients with metastatic cancer, the median survival for patients on IMM101 plus GEM was 7 months compared with 4.4 months for patients who were just taking GEM. And this difference was statistically significant. However, when they looked at patients who just had locally advanced disease, the results were reversed. The median survival for patients on IMN 101 plus GEM was only 6.7 months, compared with 9.2 months for patients who were just taking GEM. And again, this difference was statistically significant. Now, the locally advanced disease subgroup was only small, so the difference may be a statistical anomaly. But Campbell's suggestion that it should be given to everyone as a first-line treatment is definitely not supported by these results. If these results are correct, doing this could reduce life expectancy for these patients. Now, you may be wondering how the results for the IMM 101 in the metastatic pancreatic cancer subgroup compare with other treatments for pancreatic cancer. Well, the current standard of care now for metastatic pancreatic cancer is GEM plus nab-paclitaxel, and NAB stands for nanoparticle albumin bound. A number of studies have looked at this treatment, and this is a review summarising the results. What they found was that the median overall survival when it was combined with GEM was 8.7 to 13.5 months, which is higher than the 7-month survival when GEM was combined with the IMM 101 mycobacterium product that Dalgleish is touting. Now, it is possible that if IMM 101 was added to the NAB, paclitaxel and GEM, we would see even more improvement in overall survival, which would be wonderful for patients with pancreatic cancer. But at this stage, we don't know that. It could also be the case that adding the product would reduce survival, like it appeared to do with patients who had locally advanced pancreatic cancer. We just don't know, which is why the company that owns IMM 101, which Dalgleish is associated with, is planning studies to investigate this. Hopefully the trials will be successful and the product will be approved. In the meantime, though, we shouldn't be giving patients false hope. Campbell and Dalgleish didn't stop with the cancer claim for the IMM 101 mycobacterium vaccine, though. They also claim it's a vaccine for COVID.
This has much broader application. It also, and I make no bones about pushing this here, that the IMM 101 is
this is the Mycobacteria abensi vaccine.
Yes, that's its trade name. That's what it's called. Its proper name, and it is heat kill Mycobacteria abensi. But it is the proprietary is how you kill it, how you stabilise it, how you make it antigenic. That's the so-called secret of it. But I personally believe you don't need the government to give billions away for messenger RNA factories to create the variants of the future. No, because this pandemic has shown by the time you make a vaccine against one variant, by the time you get it out there and start putting it in the population, another variant's popped up. And we know the bivalent antibodies to cope with this, and which Moderna and Pfizer are all telling us work brilliantly. No, they don't. They, because of all the things I discussed in the last video, they are of no use at all. Whereas once you boosted your gradually sleeping and retiring army of T cells and woken them all up and recharged them, they don't need any further instructions. They will see their viruses. And what's more important, they will see similarities that T cells will see. And if they're good T cells and they sense a new variant coming in, they program the relevant B cell response. You don't need a vaccine to try to predict the B cell response. That just confuses things, which explains the papers we showed that patients who had a good immune response to COVID and never had a vaccine have a far, far better immune response than those who've had any number of vaccines.
So the physiological way is that the T cells control the B cells.
Yes.
The T cells help the B cells. The B cells say, fair enough, T cells, I'm going to start pumping out antibodies, and they do.
Yeah.
To try and shortcut that physiological process, to shortcut a human physiological process could be described as arrogant.
Not sure what Dalgleish means by a superior immune response if you get infected. Does he mean the cytokine storm that led to acute respiratory distress syndrome in 15% of COVID cases prior to vaccination and resulted in many deaths? Or does he mean the increase in autoimmune diseases following COVID, which is substantially reduced if you are vaccinated? Who knows? Now, listening to Campbell and Dalgleish, you may be mistaken for thinking that mRNA vaccines don't induce a T cell response and do some other weird thing that Campbell thinks is arrogant. This is simply not true. A large number of studies have shown that mRNA vaccines generate a robust T cell response. In fact, in this study, they showed that vaccines generated a superior CD8 T cell response to infection. And by the way, it's the T cells that continue to protect against serious disease after antibodies have naturally contracted. This is the same for immune responses generated by vaccination or infection. But the big claim by Dalgleish is that this IMM-101 mycobacteria vaccine would also be an effective vaccine for COVID, which is rather curious given he has just made unsubstantiated claims about the mRNA vaccines being linked to cancer. It's almost like he's trying to create a market for this new vaccine. It's also a little odd that he's making this claim at all because earlier in the pandemic, he was co-author on this paper here where the claim was made about a different vaccine. Interestingly, in this paper, the IMM-101 mycobacteria vaccine was suggested as an adjuvant for the proposed vaccine. Now he is suggesting it would be effective all by itself. Now, of course, there is no evidence to support Dalgleish's claim that this mycobacteria vaccine would be an effective COVID vaccine because it's never been trialled. However, another mycobacteria vaccine has been studied in a randomised trial, the BCG vaccine, which is the vaccine that is currently used to protect against tuberculosis. And this has off-target immunomodulatory effects that are similar to the effects of Dalgleish's vaccine. Alas, it didn't work. There was no reduction in symptomatic COVID and no reduction in severe disease in the BCG group compared to the placebo group. Now, this doesn't mean for sure that Dalgleish's vaccine wouldn't work, but it seems unlikely. So, in summary, there is no evidence supporting the claim that mRNA vaccines lead to increases in cancer and considerable evidence that they don't. There is no evidence to support the claim that IMM-101 mycobacteria vaccines will also protect against COVID, and some evidence suggesting that they won't. There is some evidence that the IMM-101 mycobacteria vaccine will improve metastatic pancreatic cancer survival rates, but the current evidence isn't conclusive. If you'd like to look further into the data I've presented, I provided links in the video's description. And please remember, this video is about the science, but you shouldn't take it as medical advice. For that, you should speak to your medical practitioner. If you've got this far, thank you for listening. And if you've liked, shared, or commented on the video, double thank you, because that helps the algorithm and means that more people will see the video. And triple thank you to everyone who has subscribed to the channel. as I'm recording this video, I'm getting tantalizingly close to cracking the 10,000 subscriber number. And I've got to say, when I started my channel 2 years ago with Julie, I just wasn't in my wildest dreams that I thought I would ever get that many subscribers. So yes, if you are one of them, just thank you for all your support. And of course, thank you to everyone who has bought me a coffee, or little Cindy here a treat, who's my new co-host. We really appreciate your support. Thank you.